Welcome to the Leftovers. In times that are a little bit uncertain and times that leave us all with a few extraneous ingredients remaining around the pantry, in the fridge, and wherever else we've left it in the house, sometimes it's helpful to figure out how we can combine a few of those things into something that not only tastes great but is healthy and doesn't leave us scrambling for Uber Eats or something like that. Today, we're going to talk about gravy. More specifically, what is also known as a roux. A roux is a sauce base, primarily a white sauce base, and is nothing more than a combination of something like butter and flour. We take the butter and the fat inside the butter, dissolve it, warm it up, you know what I mean. And then, after it reaches a certain temperature, we're going to add in flour, creating a paste that is roughly the consistency of a very soft Play-Doh. To that, we can start to add in other fats like milk, which would make a nice sort of biscuits and gravy style gravy. What we're going to use today instead of that is some leftover stew that was made earlier in the week. Hence the name of this delightful show, The Leftovers. So we have the pan heating. We're going to go ahead and toss in our butter and wait for it to warm up just a little bit. We're going to add in a little bit more flour to turn this into the paste that we're looking for as the base of our gravy. It's also known as a roux. We'll keep the heat on. We'll keep mixing until we get that consistency. Now we have just the right amount of flour added in. We're going to break this up a little bit. And we have a proper roux that we can use as a sauce base. Now we can let this cook a little bit longer and get some of those toasty flavors from both the butter and the flour. What we're going to do right now is take a little leftover kind of a chicken stock and broth made from a couple days ago, keep with the theme of the show, and turn this into a nice gravy that could be poured over really anything, because gravy could be poured over anything because it is amazing. So, what's important is that the roux mixture that we have here gets incorporated into this. So it's not just kind of a pour it and walk away sort of scenario. We're going to dump it out, and this is already thick with a few other things. Oh my goodness, that's going to be good. I'm going to take that out, dump it here, and it may get thick enough that we need to add a little bit of water. For your own gravy bases, starting with just the fat of the butter and the flour, provides a great base that you can add things like milk to. In this case, it was something that was cooked down previously for about 8 hours and served for several different dinners. There we go. The roux is now being incorporated. And we could let this bubble for just a little bit. We'll see how thick it starts to get. But we're going to go ahead and add in just a little bit of water to get some volume into this. Same principle applies, a little bit at a time. Make sure it mixes well. And then that heat is going to really start to work with the butter and the flour. And as individual ingredients, you can't even see them anymore. You can see the color of that gravy start to lighten with the addition of the water. And we're going to let it sit there and bubble for just a little bit to let that heat move consistently through the mixture. All right, welcome to part 2 of today's Leftovers episode. It's time to make some egg noodles. I have fond memories of egg noodles because it, like many things from my grandma Mildred's kitchen, was something that she said I didn't understand, and she was right. And then I got kicked out of the kitchen and had to wait for dinner just like everybody else. So we're going to start with a cup of flour and then 2 eggs. Let's go ahead and get ourselves a mixing bowl. And we're going to take that flour and dump it right in the middle. And almost as if we were making a tempura batter, we're just going to pull that flour right there and put the eggs right inside. There we go. I'll wipe the hands, and we're going to start to mix these eggs in, breaking up the yolks and slowly incorporating the flour around it. If you like, you can add in a little bit of salt to flavor. We're going to add in some thyme as an herb from the garden. And as we go, the more this mixes, just like the fat of the butter was binding to the flour when we were making gravy, the egg is going to bind to the flour and help us be able to stretch it to a fairly incredible length with a decent amount of elasticity. Then we'll be able to have noodles that can cool. We'll roll it out, we'll boil them for a little bit, and you have yourself a nice budget soup just with that gravy. It's ready to compress and roll out. To do that, we'll get some additional flour so it doesn't stick to our surface. Go ahead and dump it out here. You can really start to press it now. You're looking for an incorporation of those eggs and that flour. The thyme, herbs, whatever you might see in there are going to be speckled throughout, and that's okay. You can fold and press, fold and press. Be sure to add some flour as it continues to get worked in. And then eventually you want to form it into a ball. That ball then can rest in a covered bowl in the fridge, and as small as it looks, we'll be able to get a serious amount of noodles out of this. We've given our egg noodle dough about 30 minutes of rest and chilling in the fridge. That can rest, upwards of 12 hours. Enough to slow it down a bit. And what we get to do now is roll it out on a nice floured surface. I'm going to use a rolling pin. Whatever you happen to have available works as well. Frankly, you could turn a can of oats upside down and use that to roll it out if you want. The idea is to spread it out to a consistency that is manageable and one that kind of fits the meal that you're going for. And if you don't have a particular meal in mind, my goodness, just thin it out, roll it out, cut them into slices, and boil them up. It'll taste great. One thing we didn't do previously is add in a little bit of salt. You could do a pinch upwards of perhaps half a teaspoon for this amount of dough. The reason I didn't add them in is because they're going to go into a gravy that has a good bit of salt already, so we didn't need to add any additional. Look at how far that's able to stretch. It's able to do so because of the eggs. They work with that flour and provide the ability to stretch back and forth. But look at how far we're able to stretch this. With a cup of dough, 2 eggs, and a few herbs, you can see it starting to form in there. Keep that rolling pin nice and floured. It'll help reduce friction and also help it from sticking. And here we are with our egg noodles ready to cut. There are plenty of clips online that talk about the variety of egg noodles you can make, different ways to roll them out, different ways of treating the flour and the egg itself, and even the types of flour and the egg that you use. But again, we're working with things that we think we might have around in fairly emergent times. In order to not have to draw long strips, what we are going to do though is fold this in half. So here we are. We're going to cut away from the fold so that it keeps the strength of that dough along with it. Nice thin strips. It's all right if it wrinkles up a little bit. It's all going to the belly. You see how elastic it still is, even right there at the end. This dough could stretch probably another 30% and not start fraying. And there, we have a decent set of homemade noodles that is going to go great with that gravy. So we'll take those, we're going to put them in our bowl, and then we'll just keep cutting the rest. Make sure you loosen them up, separate them a little bit.